Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome along to In Control Scotland's monthly webinar Wednesday on the 4th of May. May the 4th, it's Star Wars Day. May the 4th
It is
be with
indeed.
you.
May the 4th be with you. And also up in Aberdeen today, it's voting day. We've got some local elections today, and I think sometimes people forget about that. They think, oh, it doesn't really matter, but I think it's always good to have your say and try and make sure that people are speaking up for the things that matter for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. So we're joined today by so myself and Pauline and Alistair, we're regulars, but we're joined today by Euan Hood, who's coming along today to share some of his experiences. Welcome, Euan. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you. Yes.
And we're mainly going to be chatting about the fact that it's Learning Disability Week, aren't we?
Exactly, yeah. So it's Learning Disability Week. So sharing a little bit, maybe a wee bit about SCLD's schedule of what they've got on this week, some of the other stuff that we've got planned, and then we've got just a little bit of discussing really your story, Euan, about understanding how some of the connections that we make, how can we make things stick. And June's up with the comments already, so brilliant. And she's reminding us about the Working Together for Change programme, which we will be chatting about shortly.
And just a reminder, if you're watching live on either Facebook or YouTube, please feel free to pop any comments or questions in, and we'll hopefully try and answer them, or June will respond as well. So please have a chat. You're all welcome.
Brilliant. So we'll just do a little run through of what's on in Learn Disability Week.
Yeah.
So we're not quite halfway through it yet because it runs all the way through the weekend. But so today there's PAMIS are doing this, opening the door to discussing trauma, and that's a really important one, isn't it? Because there's more understanding nowadays of the impact of trauma on people's experience, and I guess that's something we'll be chatting about with you, Euan, as well, about how you can sometimes be traumatized by experiences. So there's that, and then making rights real in human rights time. So I guess the theme this year is human rights, isn't it, Pauline? And then we've there's lots of links to the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to see actually human rights being front and centre in the theme for Learning Disability Week, because it's really what it's all about. That's all that we're trying to achieve, is prioritising people's human rights.
So that's the Human Rights Town app. If anybody hasn't experienced that before, you can download it on your phone and do a bunch of little fun quizzes, and it will tell you a bit more about how those scenarios play out and how it impacts on people's rights. So it's a really accessible way, because sometimes people think about human rights and they get like, oh, that's really complicated, but actually it's quite straightforward when you understand it. Then there's a year of stories. There's an afternoon with Leanne Clark talking about her own adverse experiences and showing what her life's her own. So that's this afternoon. There's a gathering in the car park tomorrow. Is that something you're getting involved with, Pauline?
It is. It turns out it's in a virtual car park, not in a real car park. We were all a wee bit surprised. I thought we were going to have a party in the car park, but yeah, this looks like a really interesting event, and it links really closely to a lot of the work that In Control Scotland are working in, which is about looking at how and why people get stuck in hospitals just because they have a learning disability or autism or both, and how we can work to make sure their right to a home and a personal life and personal space and all of those things are not compromised by being held somewhere against away from their community and their home. So should be a really interesting chat tomorrow. Looking forward to that one.
I look forward to hearing more about that. Unfortunately, I won't be able to join because I'll be doing a very similar piece of work in person around about one person's situation that we've been involved with through New Roots Home. Then in the afternoon, we've got My Home, My Community, which is the kind of the third report from the House Life Survey. And so again, sometimes surveys can be really helpful in understanding what's people's experience is of being engaged and involved. So this they've got the SCLD's got this active, connected, included kind of project to help making sure that people are not passive, that people are actively engaged with things, and there's details on that, how to register. And Friday there's This Is Me, a session, awareness raising session about inequality. And then health and well-being, which I think there's been a lot more understanding about health and well-being.
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of discussions
Yeah,
here about
it's a balanced life.
it is. It's really tough sometimes.
And mental health all mixed in, yeah.
It is mental and physical health. And sometimes if things are getting on top of you and you don't feel listened to, it can be really hard to then concentrate on other things in your life.
Exactly. I get lost.
Yes. So there's so much different things in that. And then Saturday, there's the Stay Up Late celebration. I think we know something about that.
We do. Yeah. Very excited about this. Make sure you register. It's a wee bit different from usual Stay Up Lates, isn't it, Alistair? It's because it's on Zoom, so you just need to get in contact to get the link for it, rather than it being broadcast on Facebook or YouTube. It's on Zoom, isn't it?
It is indeed. So we'll put if because I'm on the other screen, I can't see it at the moment, but if June hasn't put up the link yet, we'll put the link up and put it in the comments about how to join the Stay Up Late party night, and we've got giveaways and everything. Ooh, the excitement. Ooh. And then Sunday is a day of relaxation, so that's the plan. So
brilliant. So June, I see, has been popping a load of information in the comments. So
yes.
Hello everyone.
Yeah, we've got lots of hellos to catch up on. That's the problem if I'm on the other screen. I've missed out on all this, so I have to kind of catch up with everybody. So so that's the link there, and that's really helpful. And then we've got loads and loads of good mornings from people. So it's good to see people. We've got a hello, a yo to all the In Control Scotland dudes. There you are. It's been a while since anybody's referred to me as a dude.
Same.
I've got
Hi Craig, good to see you.
And we've got Julia from Enable saying hello, and we've got Liam as well. And so it's really, really good stuff. Now, so there's lots and lots of exciting stuff on the go, and I guess what we're keen to talk about is what's some of the other stuff before we get into Euan's story? What's some of the other stuff that you've been involved in?
Yeah, so interesting. Some of the names that are coming up of folks saying hello and also talking about Stay Up Late makes me think about the We Are One Citizen Fest that we held last weekend that we were part of, that Euan was along at, and quite a lot of people I know who are watching came along to as well, which was an absolute hoot. I had a great time. I was knackered at the end of it, but it was a great 3 days of celebrating citizenship through listening to musicians, performers, amazing speakers. We had workshops, we had kind of change makers coming along to share their views and opinions. We even had some fella called Alistair chatting on a panel, didn't we?
We did indeed. We did. We had. Yeah. I think I had a couple of chats. So we did a chat about the New Roots Home stuff. When people heard like a Sylvia and Ruth stories, I think there was genuine quiet in the room because people just felt just the helplessness of just that constant struggle of year after year asking the same questions, and really the system not being able to, or so far not being able to come up with really meaningful answers, just reasons why they weren't doing stuff. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think we'll probably get into a bit more later, is that, how to avoid getting stuck in just saying the stuff we can't do rather than the stuff that we can do to make a difference. So we did a bit of that, and we did a bit about our kids. So that's our kind of New Roots Home stuff. We did a bit about our Rights and Equalities group. A couple of them came along and very bravely spoke in front of the TV cameras, which was an incredible achievement.
Yeah,
they did great. Becky and Lindsay came along, wasn't it? And they did a fantastic presentation. And another one of those where you could have heard a pin drop. They did a great job. And as well, we should say everything. We did a bit of a hybrid event this year, didn't we? Where it was in person, and we streamed it all online. So there are many hours of Citizen Fest that you can go back and watch on the Facebook page or YouTube channel if you want to pretend like you were there and just watch it start to finish. You could have 3 days worth of entertainment, which is quite a lot.
It is. So if anybody does want to go back and there were some other, there was some other incredibly strong performances, and from brilliant, talented musicians, and there were another more really heartbreaking stories from people about, like there's a transgender man and a transgender woman who shared their stories growing up, and just appalling the levels of abuse and neglect and being ignored and being blamed for abuse that happened to them. It's just it's so saddening, and I think that it's really good if people can just have a quick look at some of those stories and just think about how can they connect with some of those messages, and how do we stop these things just keeping happening.
Yeah, and there was so many powerful messages. Natalie and Alex were incredible, but I think you're right. There is a bit of a theme across a lot of the speakers and the people involved. Was there's more that unites us than divides us. Like seeing that the difficulties that all these different groups of people have come through, but actually how being connected and being part of community and having self-advocacy and all of those skills that we try and make sure people have and know that they have is so important to kind of overcome. But community is really the fundamental thing that holds it all together is people and relationships, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely, definitely. So, you've also been involved in some option 2 work. We're starting some of that as well.
I have a favourite option. So we should say actually first that our work with option 2 is, amongst other bits of work that we do, is through our Scottish Government grants. So we're delighted. Thank you, Scottish Government, for funding us for another year at least. Very grateful for that. But we started a new programme of work which is about facilitating and embedding practice change and making sure SDS works for people and organisations. So we just started that new programme. And one of the things is an option 2 project, which I'm very excited about. I'm a bit of a geek, as you know, but we've been doing research and doing case studies into organisational case studies rather than it being case studies of sole individuals or families. We were like, actually, we don't think there's very much information about like how does it feel for a health and social care partnership to be delivering option 2. How can we pick out the really interesting or good practice, and how can we see the common challenges that folk are facing along all the different areas? And it's going great guns. We're hoping to publish that really quite soon, in the next month or so, and hopefully that will start another more conversations on it, because it's really for me and for a lot of people, we reckon that option 2 is really the core of self-directed support, what makes it different to what happened before. So I'm very, very keen and very passionate about getting option 2 working for people. But what we'll do when we get that published is we'll use our new lunchtime session slot to talk about that in more detail. So it's a good opportunity for a plug for our lunchtime sessions.
Yes, indeed. They've been really popular, haven't they? Because they're just really an hour, just over an hour, and we're having them. Well, our next one is on the 10th of May, so next Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about our Grow Bigger Lives project and some of the other bits our Rights and Equalities project has got involved with, including issues such as parenting when you're care experienced, some of the challenges of that. So again, some quite deep stuff, but you can just drop in, drop out. You don't have to commit to coming for the whole time. It's a conversation, isn't it? It's an opportunity to kind of catch up and a safe space to ask questions and explore stuff together. So,
yeah. And that for folk who've been involved in our children and families lunchtime sessions on the last Thursday of a month, they're continuing as well. Really chuffed for that. We're just having more because we we think lunchtime sessions are a nice approach. So this is a new series on top of the last Thursday will be the second Tuesday will be these kind of different sessions. Oh, Keith. Oh, the young days. All these messages coming up. Yep, June, we'll definitely be sharing stuff on Citizen Fest 2022, and I'm glad you thought it was fantastic. We thought so too. Ooh, what's this?
Seen for me, Gig Buddies.
Brilliant.
So it's an in-person one in Stubcross.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
10 p.m. bands, live bands. So look forward to that.
Amazing. And Gig Buddies came along and did a chat at Citizen Fest as well, which was fantastic.
And we've got a link there to the Facebook page. So anything you want to know about things like We Are One, you can go there. And I think that was one of the things. It's like there was so much on. Sometimes, you know, folk were saying, where is it? When is it? How is it? But we did have a page with like all the listings on it. And so that's pretty good. And this is just a list of the lunchtime session stuff. June's typing away furiously this morning.
Fingers of flames of fury.
Yes, so that's really good. And so we've got Julie from Enable asking about, good to see the report. So it's that about,
absolutely.
Let's see the findings and let's understand what that means and how people can share that. Now Craig's asking, how do you get involved? Now I'm not sure if you're saying about the option 2 stuff, or is that about the stay up late, or what's that? So we'll just and yes. So if you let us know, Craig, which one you're thinking about getting involved in, that'll be lovely. If you've got any experience of option 2, then we'd love to hear you before that happens as well. And we've also got a lunchtime session for children, young people and families, and that's the end of May. That's Keith saying that. So blimey.
Phew.
Loads of stuff going on.
And that's us finished. Thanks a lot for tuning in. It's not. We've only even got started yet. Anyway, there's a lot going on. We're busy.
That's it. Well, I mean, back in the early days of lockdown, we used to do this every week, so there was a lot less to get through. But we've got a lot more to cover when it's once a month.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking about this idea of connections, making things stick, and sort of human rights, it's worth thinking about kind of the different levels of change, I think. I mean, what sort of things, when you think about changes, what things do you think about?
System change, understanding people, promoting the idea of, like option 2, promoting how change can be more beneficial and sometimes even cheaper, or certainly more focused on the person's needs. Sometimes it's, in my case, certainly is cheaper. And also, I learned that if social workers have a whole desk full of people, then if they're so overloaded, they need to be given time and space to look at that. People above, if they can't have the time and space to see change, if you're so busy driving at 90 miles an hour in one direction, you might not be able to. You get what I'm saying? If you could please put words in my mouth.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. I think that you've done really well there. That whole idea of what people feel safe doing, what they're comfortable doing, and what they need to get permission to do. So sometimes we've got this really odd situation where in our daily lives, if somebody said, look, this is how much resources you've got, go and have a think about how you best meet your needs, you would make some quite individual choices because it would be what works for you. And despite the fact that we've got some really great guidance from the Scottish Government and some really good examples of people being creative about that, on the ground, it really varies, doesn't it? And that's one of the things we see is that people aren't necessarily getting that opportunity to have that very individualized, as a matter of course. And we're seeing some of the comments here, saying our local authorities are telling parents they have no money for SDS left in either the children's or the carers' budget.
So just to pick up on that before we move on, I think that's an interesting comment. Just to comment on quickly is, I think sometimes people, and this runs really deep, to whether it's people using services, carers, people working in social work or social care, there's sometimes a confusion that SDS is something separate, and it's not. Self-directed support is the way that all social care is delivered. So if there's no money for SDS left, that means there's no money for any social care. And that feels like it's important to make sure that people understand when they're talking about SDS, we're talking about even services that are arranged and provided by the local authority or the Health and Social Care Partnership. It's everything. It's not just direct payments or people managing their own budgets in that really specific way. It's everything.
May I say a word, please?
Please.
And I'm thinking of Alistair here and myself. I was going to be put in supported accommodation, which Alistair pointed out would be unsuitable. But if I put myself in the position of the person, the managers who take these decisions, or the doctors, they say, like, we've got a budget, and it's like, to me, it's like, do we go for safe food, like mince and tatty safe food? Or do we go for then when we're handing over to someone like Alistair, if they're filled their head with so much work in the desk, they have to say, okay, they have the budget, they have the money. If we're going to spend this money on something, we have to be convinced this safe difference. And again, this is when, and with me, this is, well, there was a risk in it still. There's always a risk in everything. But Alistair had the way. But it's like if you go from comfort food, there's a risk. But what was I saying? The risk offset. What Alistair did was more person-centered to my needs, rather than institution and current settings. But if they can't, okay, you need to help me finish off.
I'll finish it. Help me finish off. So interestingly, just Euan's earlier point about the affordability of things, was he was covering the fact that sometimes the best things don't always have to be the most expensive things, and again following up from what you said, Pauline, about SDS is social care. It's not a specific brand of stuff. It's just everything. But people still don't always get that. So despite the fact that Euan got offered when he wasn't managing with a lot of things in his life to be in a residential setting, part of the reasoning behind that was because it was like, but that doesn't come out of the same budget. And it was like, well, but that's the whole point of SDS, is that we don't do stupid stuff just because it's in a different budget, and that budget's okay. So you could have ended up in a place.
There's always a risk to everything, but it needs managers to sit down, try and understand the situation, have a bit more breathing space and room to consider, and then. The one theme that I found when I talk to other people with other conditions, etc., is the themes cross them. It's I think you mentioned this earlier. It's being listened to, being understood, and those themes cross not only through autism, which I have and Alistair deals with, but many conditions in it. And it's that I find that when I talk to other people in residences, those themes travel across many conditions or mental health or such, and these are themes that cross. And I think that's what you might have been saying earlier, Pamela. I can't remember.
It's what it links to me is you said something really nice there, Euan, about like mince and tatties. If you have mince and tatties every day of your life, you will not die. You'll be fine. You will be alive. You will have a full belly. You'll get through your day. But it's not very interesting. It's not very exciting, and it's probably not the best for you, really, to just have that safe and same option all day, every day. And I think there's what you picked up on was about the time and space for people to get to know the folk they're supporting better, to be able to make different choices, but also linking into we know social work are really stretched, things are really tough, everybody's really, really busy. So sometimes it's just a default, like it's easier to just think
Exactly.
we'll just do the same thing, mince and tatties today, mince and tatties tomorrow, mince and tatties the next day, rather than it being actually if we can create the time and space to be able to make decisions better. And that's really easy for me to say because I'm not sitting as a frontline social worker. So where it comes for us and groups like Working Together for Change is to come together and think about how we can find solutions that work for everybody, rather than it just being me sitting waggling my fingers saying no, we can't always do that, and the other person saying, well, what am I meant to do? Working Together for Change is
exactly, that was definitely it, wasn't it? The whole idea was about that confidence that it could be a space where everybody could kind of say what worked for them, what they wanted to do, what would make a difference individually, and to some of this culture change, the systems change, the shifts in power, so that nobody felt like anybody was having a go at them, and if it went wrong, that they would be nailed to the wall, because that's always a risk, isn't it? When you try something different, somebody could say, well, you did that, so if it goes wrong, it's on you. And so sometimes that's a real, and that really inhibits opportunities to try different things because you're worried about people taking a pop at you. Stick to the safe stuff.
Yeah. And it comes down to trust, doesn't it? It's about trust, and that's it can be a really tough nut to crack. But when we're talking about change, the power is one of the things that I would say is important to change, to make sure people's human rights are upheld and in place. Is that it should really be the people who are living their lives that have the power and control over their lives, rather than it being somebody else. And you mentioned that when we were chatting before, Euan, as well, about power.
Yeah.
Yes.
If the powerful think they're too powerful and almost God status, then you can't talk to people like that because they're not going to learn anything. If they don't respect the fact that the customer, you serve the customer's needs, like in all shops and services and hotels, that if they don't tell you what you're going to get, they have to offer the best products and compete. But competition doesn't exist when you go to the council. In the health service, you get one doctor, you get one person, and if they decide we're the only people and we have a monopoly, it doesn't work.
That's
but
a good point.
In any other area of life, you've got competition. You can choose the service you get. You can choose the food where you go to get that food service, but not when you go to the health service. So you have to. Yeah.
That's so, and there's not just the competition bit of that. There's that bit about answerability generally, about who do you answer to? Do you answer to your line manager for your decisions, or are you answerable to the person who's getting the support? Jacqueline's just asked a question there confused about human rights and how this sits within the law regarding equality and inclusion. And one of the things I would say about that is there's a book that you can download. I don't know if we've got the link to it handy, but it's a book by MECOP, and it was about challenging social care decisions and looking at based on the human rights legislation. And it was really, really good because it was quite straightforward. It gave you examples of how some local authorities, how health social care partnerships had interpreted what the rules were, what they'd said, and whether or not they'd been agreed with or overturned when they've been challenged on things. Yeah. So to give you some practical ideas about ways to challenge, because we all know that it can be exhausting to challenge the system. And I think that maybe and we've got a positive comment from Jim saying, you're really good and working together for change.
Thank you, Jim.
And so that was really good. So maybe, do you want to tell us a little bit, because I think your story started with a need to be heard. So
yeah, right. I needed help with communication with a parent. But I also had been assaulted in my own flat, so I needed safe living as well, because I would classify myself as vulnerable. But the doctors, rather than saying, we will give you the help with communication, said, no, you do it yourself. And then basically the situation got complex because I had 3 people supporting me. But we looked through the notes later, and the 2 things. First of all, the person, the lowest level worker mental health officer, was obviously scared of the big doctor who's on a psychiatrist, presumably on 100,000. So she wasn't able to communicate with him. But also they just didn't listen. They didn't understand autism, but worse than that, they didn't listen or didn't try to go down my track of what I needed. And they were all basically totally out of their depth. As was the problem, and it was disastrous because I'm now under social work, which is why Alistair's supporting me.
Yeah,
but and that's the thing. If you're not a doctor and you're not open-minded and you can't even listen to your own staff, you've got real problems. Okay, you can add in that, Alistair.
Yeah. So I mean, I think one of the things that I took from Euan's experience was there was very much when there was conflict, the idea was that Euan was the one that had to change. All the way through it is
exactly.
You need to change. You need to do stuff differently, and because you talk very well.
Yeah.
So people think, oh well, Euan, you just need to do this. But as we all know, with autism particularly, but for a lot of us, it's all very well saying that we can talk when the pressure's off. But when we're put in certain circumstances and we're having to be in conflict with somebody who it's important to, that we can find that really difficult. And you explained that really, really well, time and time again. But people offered you stuff, but they offered you stuff that wasn't what you needed. And that was a frustrating thing.
And can I say something here? And Alistair said this, if your house is in fire, the fire brigade come round. It's a bit late in the day to get health and safety and fire precautions in the house. The fire brigade deal with that. When you go, if you've got a criminal invading your house, you go to a lawyer. He doesn't do it for you. He doesn't educate you to do it. He does it. If the Titanic's sinking, it's a bit late in the day to offer swimming lessons to tell you to do it yourself. That's the point. And that applies to everyone. So therefore, when I'm autistic and I need help, when at a conference they're saying, when you go to social work, you've now got a crisis situation. That's just the way it works. So by that time you go to Cornhill hospitals or social work, you're going to be past the stage of saying do it yourself. But that would apply to everyone in life, whether you've got a criminal, when lawyers, whether that's the house going in fire. That's how life works.
Yeah,
I think I've made myself clear.
That's really good stuff.
And anyone at that point in time would have trouble communicating because you'd be terrified. You'd be in a state of panic.
Yeah.
If the Titanic's sinking, you're going to be in a panic situation. So there's no point in asking them to. Yeah, okay.
So that's brilliant, Euan. So you've articulated that really well, really clearly. I think we can all feel how frustrating that must have been. Mm-hmm. You came along on, and you're involved in quite a lot of groups as well, aren't you? But one of the groups that I definitely know you're involved in was coming along to Working Together for Change. Yeah. And the point of that was to try and make connections across different types of people, across different bits of the country, to think about how we could find solutions. So, how tell us a wee bit about Working Together for Change. How did it feel? What did you do?
Well, I got a chance to find out what it was like from the social workers' side, because obviously I can't go into someone and just say, right, you're going to do this, 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 and this, and this. It's get to and this is what you're doing. Get to see how it works from their side, and then it's how you fit the two together. Yeah. When I went back to the hospital, Alistair helped me. I said, I don't expect everyone to understand about autism. A social worker cannot be an expert in all trades, but it's give me the information I need that can make this situation work better for you, and something that fits into so it's how it fits together. It's because social workers deal with all sorts of situations, all sorts of people. That's the nature of how it works, and it's no one's going to be an expert in everything, a jack of all. So therefore, that's what I learned. I understand. I hear it from Alistair, but it's better when I hear it from the people who actually do that job.
Mm-hmm.
And then I says, okay, this is right, and then I can then say, right, okay, how do we fit the two together?
And that's been a really good point, that when we're raising the issues of Euan's case, Euan was firing out loads and loads of emails explaining his situation. Now, he's explaining it really well, but it was a bit overwhelming for people to hear a lot of that stuff. And so what I tried to do was to try and manage the information in a way that we concentrated just on the key areas. Euan's having a laugh at me for this one, but just the key areas so that people could see it, understand it, and not be overwhelmed by it, and then for us to really explain what we were looking for. So again, we weren't looking to hang anybody out to dry on it. What we were saying was we wanted to draw a line under it. We wanted them to appreciate and understand the pain and the trauma that had caused, and we wanted to make sure that it was written down in Euan's files and understood by everybody that this could never happen again. And that's, I guess, comes back to that thing about change for you, but also we're keen to kind of expand on that into how can we change the culture a bit more so that other people don't have that.
Because the people that support me, Alistair's created a support group around me, but that support, understanding of support, has to go back into the hospital if I use them again. It's the social worker, they have to deliver that service in the future potentially, so they must know and accept that they're going to be able to deliver that. If they can't deliver that, there's no point in me being here, but they have to be able to. And they have to convince me that they can deliver that. And that's a bit of a problem for me still. But anyway.
That's a really fundamental thing, is that if you have good people around you, and I think that what's changed for Euan is that he has people around about him. He's got a good doctor. He's got, people around him. He's got a good home now where he wasn't happy where he was before. So that on a personal level, a lot of stuff has changed, but it's believing that the system's changed enough so that if one of us wasn't around, how much is, can you expect that experience to be different? And I guess following on from that, Ian, who was part of one of the social workers who was part of the Working Together for Change, has got in touch to ask Euan and myself to do a bit of a presentation to some social workers up in Highland. So I think that's really great, because again, rather than it being you being the one knocking on the door saying, I've got something to tell you, they're actually saying, come and speak to us. And I think that's one of the best things about Working Together for Change, because it's creating that, that dynamic where people feel ready to hear the right stuff.
Yeah.
So is that something, Euan, that you're keen to do more of? Go out and speak to different people and get your...
If I can motivate myself, yes. But autism is there's good areas and good places are good at autism, there's something bad. But as I said, when I talked to Alistair about some cases, when I was down in Glasgow at the We Are One Citizen Fest, I said there was a case, and I said, on the face of it, this sounds in autism terms very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talked to certain persons, and they confirmed it was indeed that simple. It wasn't simple in maybe practical terms, but in autism terms, it was simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, and this is kind of why I'll put in a word for Alistair, because it's just, it confounded me. Let's just say it like that. I'm not even. That's all I can say. I'm lost for words now. But
and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes we hear people's stories, like Sylvia's story as part of the New Roots Home Group, about people describing what makes sense in somebody's life, and then what happens is we can clearly see that none of the things that matter in somebody's life are there. They've all been ripped out because the system hasn't allowed it. Now, appreciating COVID was part of that, but even with that, imagine everything that mattered to you, everything that was a coping mechanism, everything that you valued in terms of relationships and structure, that was all ripped out, not just for, a day or a month, but for years. And then you are then judged on how you behaved as a result of that. Very few of us would come out of that, shining brightly. And so that's some of the stuff we're doing, is trying to say, on a human level, this is madness. How can you possibly expect this to work? What we have to do is, we can only possibly start by building in the things that matter to people and showing that we're trustworthy, and then seeing how that affects the person's ability to cope.
And one of the really interesting but really quite frightening things that's come out of Near Roots Home for me is the number of people who said, God, Jamie sounds like my boy. But things went differently. So I managed to have one thing happen that led him to take a completely different path. And it's that kind of tightrope, I think, that a lot of people, and parents and carers of kids with complex needs, or adults with autism and learning disabilities themselves, they feel like they're walking this really kind of tightrope sometimes, where if one thing happens, it could actually spiral in that way that gets out of control. So it's why it's so important that we hear people's stories, and we more than hear them, we listen to them, and we think about why we're making the decisions that are being made, like trying to make sure that they are done for the best reasons, not just for the most convenient reasons, not mince and tatties.
Right, can I speak? I'm not sure Alistair can give his opinion here, but for me, autism is simple. It's communication and sensory issues. Now, with autism, there's several ways. We communicate several ways. So we communicate verbally. We can communicate by writing something on a bit of paper and sending it, or emails. We can communicate by the picture exchange communication system. If we want a cup of coffee, we can show you a picture of a coffee and do that. If we cry, that's expressing, communicating our fear. If we have anger, if we hit people, that's also a form of communication. And I think from an autistic point of view, people have to learn that and understand that. And I think that's very simple to understand. And I think the other thing that gets lost sometimes is, and I'm thinking of Alistair's case here, is treat us like human beings. If you stuff medication down with us, if we put a bit of paper with the word coffee on it, and you say no, or you say, well, not just now, or if you don't give an answer like, well, maybe we haven't got time to stand, but you can have a coffee, I'll make one in half an hour, or whatever, then what do you expect? And when I was listening to Alistair's cases, I'm not surprised people get angry if I treated you the same way as some people like that. So sometimes, and that's what, when I talk to people, I got very upset about, on the basis, if someone can communicate their needs, i.e. coffee, walk in the park, and then they don't get that, then they get angry or even violent or kick, then, well, what do you expect? And then if you treat that with drugs, you're not treating like a human. You're not going to ever solve their behavior that way. You're actually part of the problem, not part of the answer. Okay, you can give me your thought, Alistair.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. If we start by trying to control the behavior that people have, then we deny people their rights, and we are not listening. Yes. We are imposing our will, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of us have always tried to do, is not start by managing the behavior, but start by listening and understanding what the person is saying, and then working out from there. And it's getting the confidence for everybody to work in that way, because we've got, like Pauline, you were saying, so much examples of people where that's worked, and so many examples of where part of the reason that institutions, the idea was that we're shutting them down, was because they don't work. The idea that people are kept safe, miles away from everybody else, is a lie. It's a myth. People weren't safe. People were abused more than ever, and that there's so many layers in which those things myths have all been kind of debunked. and yet we're still here arguing about this even now. So so I suppose that's the thing. On a practical level, we are doing things on the ground to try and shift not just the personal, but the cultural and the kind of the big system power stuff, one bit at a time.
Mm-hmm. And actually, one of the best things that I've found so far is that actually when you take it to individual or human or personal level, it's really rare that you'll find somebody who says, no, I don't agree with what you're saying. I don't think people should have the right to choose the way they live their life. They shouldn't have the right to choose their own support. They shouldn't have dignity, freedom, respect, all of these things that we're crying out for. I haven't met anybody so far who said that. So that's why it's so important to me to know that people can make that change, that the systems might be set up a particular way, but it's people that change systems, and that has to come that way around rather than it being systems changing people. I think everybody gets into this line of work. It works in social care, works in social work, works in health. They do it to make people's lives better. And if we can just never forget that, make sure we always hold on to that actually that's what we're all here for. And it might be hard, but we can do it.
We can do it. So and so we're intending running another round of working together for change, aren't we?
Oh, aye, we are. Yeah, watch this space. Watch this space.
So that'll be coming up soon. And in the meantime, if anybody is interested in having Euan talk to them and explaining more about his experience or anything to do with that, just get in touch, and we would, love to help keep making that connection, keep improving people's understanding. And Jim's just saying, people's behaviour as well is way of telling us what they've not heard, what we've not heard, or what they're saying wrong, and not jump into conclusions. It doesn't always feel like that, Polly. Karen's right. No, yes, it doesn't. I mean, and that's one of the things. It shouldn't be this hard. And Derek Freely said in his report, social care shouldn't feel like a battle, and for too many people it still does. So we are all keen to work in your corner and support you to make those connections, and to try and, where possible, not make that a battle when we do try and help you, because we do want everybody to feel comfortable with these solutions, not just one group. But it does take a huge amount of effort, and we really do appreciate everybody's thoughts, comments, everybody coming on and watching today, and everybody who gets involved in all of these programs and keeps pushing for the right stuff.
Yeah, and actually, if this sounds like the kind of thing you want to get involved in, please get in touch when we go to advertise Working Together for Change, or get involved in our other sessions as well, because we've got loads and loads of stuff going on, and we're always welcoming new folk to come into conversation and see how we can start making these changes. So, it's what it's all about. It's all about.
Okay, any final thoughts for today?
No, that for me, that's been an amazing chat. Thank you hugely, Euan, for it's always brilliant hearing you speak, but it's super valuable. Have you got anything else you want to finish up by saying, Euan?
I just say the main themes for me is listening to people and understanding the people that are being served and needed. And that will, if you'll do that and actually take them seriously, that will go a long way to help building trust. Listen to the people you serve.
Yeah.
No, that's really important. Brilliant. So, Craig, if you want to get in touch with us about your SDS rights and tell us a bit about where you stay, and what we can put you in contact with people to maybe have a bit more of a chat with you about what's available in your local area. And smashing, that's been great. Thanks a lot to June for all her helpful commenting.
Yes, and definitely get involved. So we're 10th Tuesday, next Tuesday, we're first lunchtime session for Grow Bigger Lives. Thursday, lunchtime session for children and families. And if not, we'll see folk again this time next month for webinar Wednesday. Action.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.